Hi there everyone, Lars here with a book review for Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson, brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And this book, at least in my opinion, is so fantastic. And I'll get into pros and cons for it. This book is definitely not meant for everyone. But I'm first going to talk about what's going on here in this book, what Sanderson is doing right here, and whether you might be interested in this particular book. Now, as I talk about this book, I will have footage going from Pirates of the Caribbean and The Princess Bride, because that's basically the two major inspirations for this particular book. It feels like you're reading some crazy pirate adventure, but with all of the trappings and tongue-in-cheek humor of The Princess Bride. So the story follows a girl named Tress, who's just your regular average girl out on an island in the middle of an ocean that is unlike any ocean you've ever seen before, because this ocean is made up of deadly spores that move around kind of like water, not quite, but kind of like water, because of strange movements of sand, air, and water underneath all of those spores. It's kind of strange and weird. Sanderson's like, don't worry, it's all actually very scientific. I have watched the experiment. I still don't quite get it. In any case, it works right here. Well, Tress is in love with the Duke's son. His name is Charlie. It's super cute. Their relationship is really fun. It's basically Wesley and Buttercup, and Charlie is going to be shipped off to get married. Well, he's not going to have any of that because he wants to be with Tress, and so he does everything in his power to crash every single engagement in the most glorious way possible until finally the Duke and the King have had enough, and they decide that they're going to send him off to this evil sorceress to negotiate a peace with her. It's basically a death sentence, because no one survives going out into the Black Sea, where the sorceress is. And Tress is absolutely distraught. But hey, the sorceress every now and then takes prisoners. Maybe Charlie's a prisoner. And so she decides she's going to get on a ship, and she is going to find the love of her life. Well, all kinds of shenanigans ensue from that point onwards, with her stowing away on a ship, that ship getting attacked by pirates, joining the pirate crew, becoming a practitioner of spores, someone who learns how to use these spores, because if any water gets on them, these spores do all kinds of crazy things. So she learns how to use spores in various ways in order to tap into the magic of ether. Whatever that might be. We're still unsure, because Sanderson is still figuring out this magic system. But there's so much crazy stuff that happens. And this book is really just a whole lot of fun. I'm not going to give away some of the big spoilers right here, but this book goes to all different kinds of places with what you can do with this crazy ocean, with a new crazy magic system, and with just a delightful crew of misfits who are with a demonic captain, someone who is truly awful. Now, if you are a fan of Brandon Sanderson's works, you will recognize at least two characters in this book. At least one of them most definitely by name, and that will be Hoyd. And no, I am not giving away much of a spoiler when I say that, because he is the narrator of this particular book. That's why there's a lot of very tongue-in-cheek humor. That's where a lot of the Princess Bride elements come on into play right here. And another, I will not spoil what that is, because it's actually really, really neat. For those who are Brandon Sanderson fans who really dive into the Cosmere, this book is almost a must-read for you, because it solidifies the timeline. The timeline of the Cosmere now makes a whole lot more sense when you've read this book, because you can begin to understand, so this is where Roshar is at this time. This is where Scadrial is at this time. This is where Nautilus is at this time. Okay then, this is where all these other characters are at this time. Things are coming together. Okay. If you haven't read Brandon Sanderson's other books, the main story itself is good enough, in my opinion, that it will hold your attention. But if you don't know his other books, it's not as fulfilling or as rewarding, and that is a bit of a drawback. However, I can't overly fault Brandon Sanderson for this, because, first of all, this was a book that he wrote for his wife. This is a love letter to her. Tress is basically Emily. Tress is just this fantastic, sweet girl who people have said, and I feel like this is a little rude of certain writers out there who have criticized Sanderson and his family, to be all like, your wife is very plain. Well, Tress is a plain girl who turns out to be amazing. And for Sanderson, his wife is his rock. His wife is his greatest fan. His wife is his greatest support and how he's able to do everything that he does. This is a love letter to her. This is her as the hero. He has himself as Charlie within the story and plays his own role, but really this is her story, with all of the humor that passes between them, all of his thanks to her and her heroism, her strength, her ability to adapt and grow. That's what this is, and you can just feel that as you're reading this book. It's one of the things I find very, very sweet. I think it's also a book that he wrote to kind of give himself a very good mile marker in the Cosmere to say, okay then, this is what's happening. Because all of the other books, while connected in some kind of way, they don't normally share major events. However, for this book, oh boy, again, if you've read the other books, you now understand how things are moving. All these major plot points are coming together, major characters are coming together, major magic systems are coming together. It now makes sense. And so I think this is a book also for him to kind of be like, okay, so where am I going again with all of this? Ah, yes. And this was an experiment on his part to make sure that where he's going with his endgame books, like a decade from now, should actually work the way he wants them to. So it's a love letter to his wife, and it's also practice for the things he's going to do in the future. Well, his wife said, why don't you publish it? And so through the great Brandon Sanderson Kickstarter, this was one of the books that was offered up as a thank you, as a prize, if you supported the publishing of his special books that he wrote during COVID. So that's the basic story behind the book, what it is, how it came to be, basically its overall theme. Again, it's just a love letter to his wife, with Sanderson also being indulgent in his own experimental ways. And so if you're a reader who doesn't really like it when a writer gets experimental, this probably isn't a book for you, because there's a lot of things going on that are really wacky and insane. This is also a book that combines numerous genres that normally don't go together. So again, if you don't like it when different genres mix, this probably isn't a book for you. But if you're all into experimental stuff, if you're into genres being flipped on their head, this is most definitely a book that you need to try out. Another thing is this: Sanderson's humor is all throughout this book. If you're not a fan of how he does his humor, this book is going to grate on you. And I do know people who did not enjoy the humor of this book. And I know that anyone who doesn't like Hoyd will not like this book either, because this is basically Hoyd non-stop telling a story right here with all of his own little interjections, just like again in The Princess Bride, where the story suddenly pumps the brakes real fast to then have conversations between grandfather and grandson, and also in a way to kind of like wink at the audience of like, we know, like, come on, we know there's a lot of fourth wall breaking that's going on here in this book. And so again, if you're not a fan of that, then this book is not for you. If you are ready though to buckle up for a really insane journey and go on an adventure on an ocean that shouldn't exist, with characters who are completely over the top in so many ways, if you're in for some cheesy 80s style humor, then this is most definitely a book for you. And as someone who loves over the top stories, who loves seeing genres get messed around with, as a fan of Brandon Sanderson, and as someone who loves 80s cheese, this book definitely did it for me. This was an absolutely fun read, and it's something that I've been telling people, like, you really need to read this book, and the artwork inside is absolutely exquisite as well. I personally think that this is a triumph for Brandon Sanderson, but I do put in all those caveats because I have seen people not really enjoy this book, and I wanted to explain why that might be the case. But this book most definitely gets 2 thumbs up from me, a very hearty recommendation. I hope you have the chance to read it because it is good. And if you're someone who hasn't been reading Brandon Sanderson's books, I definitely encourage them. I would say start off with the original Mistborn trilogy. That's what got me into the series, and they're really well written. Some people say, no, it's just all bad schlock. Well, if that's his bad schlock, it's good schlock. I enjoyed it. There's definitely some big cosmic themes to his stories. He has his own way of writing, but again, it really works well for me. So I encourage people, if they really want to get into epic fantasy, that's the series to go into. But that will do it for this review and recommendation. If you're looking for deeper dives into writing and various stories, then please check out our other videos here on our channel, and also head on over to our podcast, Camille's Harem. We also have writing exercises for all you novice authors to check out over at our Pinterest page. And if you would like to support us here and what we do on YouTube, please like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell notification, but even more so than that, check out the books that we've published. I've released one of my own books recently, Notice Me, Send Pie. This is a hilarious little teenage rom-com that will also encourage you to do some of your own baking. Please give it a try, give it a read. Link for that is in the description below. Otherwise, thank you for joining us on this adventure that we call writing, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.